What was once a rarity has now become the norm. Modern society has largely given up on marriage and decided to settle for long-term dating relationships. And I think this is a huge mistake. Hey, this is Todd. Welcome to the Thrive Singles Podcast. Whether you're single again or still single, stop hating being single and learn to thrive. And welcome back for another week of the Thrive Singles Podcast. And if you're new here, welcome aboard. It's great to have you here with us. I hope you'll stick around and subscribe. Maybe leave a comment or two. Each week, I talk about subjects important to single adults, especially Christians, middle-aged, single again, or long-term single adults. Because it was my experience as a single again 40-year-old Christian, and my experience helping other middle-aged single Christians, that inspired me to start Thrive Singles blog and Thrive Singles podcast. This week, I want to talk about why I don't recommend long-term dating relationships. The question modern society asks is no longer, are you married or single? Marriage is no longer assumed to be the end game. The modern relationship questions have unfortunately become, who are you dating now? And do you think you'll move in together? It seems like a large percentage of single people have simply given up on marriage and accepted as truth that they'll have to settle for a series of long-term dating relationships throughout their adult years. I can't, in good conscience, recommend that people do that. I don't believe it's good for the individuals involved. It's rarely good for any children involved. And I don't believe it's a good thing for society as a whole. The first problem I have with long-term dating relationships is they usually turn into sexual relationships. In fact, in most circles, it's pretty much understood that if you're dating, you're having sex. In fact, for a lot of people, having a steady sexual partner is the whole point of it. That and always having a date for any occasion. Look, I know I'm getting older, and this truth is now viewed as a relic of generations past. It's, in the last few decades, fallen out of fashion. But truth is still truth. Sex is for married people. Despite modern society's gamophobia and aversion to commitment in general, the best place for personal fulfillment, the best place for child rearing, and yes, the best place for sex is within the bond of a loving, stable, healthy, lifelong commitment. And if anybody tells you otherwise, question their motives. Another problem I have with long-term relationships is they're used as a substitute for marriage, a Marriage-Lite, if you will. While you play long-term couple, you get some short-term benefits of marriage, like sex and always having a date for any occasion, without being tied down to a long-term commitment you might second-guess in the future. It's trying to get the rewards without the risks. But, and I say this as a happily remarried divorcee, with greater risk comes greater reward. I'm glad I took the risk of remarrying. The rewards are phenomenal. Despite what my first wife did, I know my wife has my back. And despite what her husband did, my wife knows I have her back. We're in it for life. We're pulling in the same direction and looking forward to as many decades of marriage as we can squeeze into what's left of our earthly existence. You'll never have that in a long-term dating, Marriage-Lite relationship. Those are relationships people get into and out of as they fall into and out of, quote, love, end quote. They're what people settle for. And as such, they're a poor substitute. Real love thrives in commitment. Insecurity thrives in dating relationships, short or long-term. Maybe the worst thing about long-term dating relationships is that going from one long-term dating relationship to the next, it inoculates you against making a permanent commitment. It's like getting a marriage vaccine. You get small doses of deactivated marriage-like stuff, and that helps you build up a resistance to the real thing. You begin to think that relationships naturally start, build, plateau, decline, then inevitably end. Your life becomes a predictable cycle of long-term, tragically ending relationships. My God, that sounds depressing. You deserve better. It's time to break that cycle. And even if they don't totally inoculate you for marriage, long-term relationships end up delaying marriage. I've seen people go through decades of dating cycles before they wised up and got out of that rut. In fact, I know a few people who are 50-ish and still stuck in that same dead-end dating cycle. This seems counterintuitive, but the way to finally break free and have a chance of getting married is probably to completely stop dating for a while and decide what kind of person you want to marry. Then take some time to become the kind of person who's attractive to that kind of person. Learn to date in a healthy, non-sexual way, and don't get sidetracked in the meantime by any attractive people you might meet. Let me mention one more problem I see with long-term dating relationships. Long-term relationships disincentivize people from marrying. Like the old cliche asks, who's going to buy the cow when they're getting free milk? If somebody is so shallow that all they want is to have a date for the upcoming events and have sex now and then, dating them will only reinforce that mindset. It won't get you one bit closer to marriage. In today's culture, marriage gets a bad rap. But if you're settling for a series of long-term dating relationships, you're settling for second best. There's nothing like the original long-term relationship, marriage. Knowing somebody has your back and is committed to you and that you'll grow old together, that's a lot more fulfilling than, I love you until the sex cools off, we start disagreeing, and I fall out of love with you. And people say, but won't sex get old with the same partner decade after decade? Actually, studies have shown that sex gets better with age and experience together. You can get a thrill of new love and sex, and that can be great, but it always plateaus and then it declines. At that point, what do? Do you throw away that relationship and go in search of the new and exciting again? Or do you learn together how to keep things fresh and exciting because you're committed to a lifetime of fulfilling sex? But my friend got married and now they're divorced. Yeah, marriages do end sometimes. My first one did. There's no guarantee. But the odds are more in your favor when you get married. Most marriages are good and do last a lifetime. This is much more so when both people are active Christians who get involved in their church together and pray together regularly. And while some marriages do end, all dating relationships end. Actually, I could have included this as one of my main reasons to avoid long-term relationships. With very few exceptions, pretty close to 100% of dating relationships end. That's the very nature of dating relationships. They're temporary. They have a beginning, a middle, and an inevitable, usually painful end. Even long-term relationships still last for a finite amount of time. It's nowhere near till death parts us. Other people say, but there are so many bad marriages. Really? For every bad marriage you show me, I'll show you multiple bad dating relationships. And statistics bear that out. Statistics show that the chances of abuse are much greater in dating relationships than in a marriage. With all that said, please don't get the idea that I'm opposed to dating altogether. If you listen to this podcast regularly, you know that I consider dating an important part of thriving as a single. But I believe in dating in a different way than you have to this point. A better, smarter, non-sexual, non-romantic way. I believe in dating with specific goals in mind, like having fun, learning to interact with the opposite sex better, getting to know yourself better, and getting to know people you might be interested in marrying later. So, till next time, think back and look objectively at your dating history. Does it make you smile, or does it make your face get all tensed up just thinking about it? The way it has been doesn't have to be the way it will be. Not if you're willing to do things differently. So go back and read or listen to my posts about dating. then make a few changes. Those are my thoughts on long-term dating relationships. I've been wanting to talk about this for quite a while now. And as always, your thoughts are welcome. That's what the comment section's for. Just keep it civil. And don't forget to subscribe while you're here. And as always, till next time, thrive on. I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. See you next week. Till then, be sure to subscribe and go check out my extensive archive of past posts at thrivesingles.com. And thrive on. Whoa, thrive. Yeah, come alive. There's more to life. You gotta grow, you gotta thrive. Whoa, whoa, you gotta thrive. There's more to life than to just survive.